happening with Russia and Ukraine. We have new reporting today. Ukraine has not been involved in the peace talks occurring in Saudi Arabia. An aide close to President Zelensky says that as of Saturday evening, so that's last night, Ukraine has still not been invited to the peace talks between the U.S. and Russia and Saudi Arabia. The aide adds, it is dangerous to speak with enemies before you speak with allies. Ukraine's position remains unchanged. We need to have a joint position of Ukraine, the U.S., and Europe before any negotiations with Putin. Your response, sir?
I think he's absolutely correct. And the statements made at the Munich Security Conference, first by Secretary Hegseth, were completely inappropriate. You don't give away your leverage in a negotiation before you start the negotiation. And President Vice President Vance's statements, too, were highly, I think, provocative to our European allies and very comforting to Vladimir Putin. This is not a surprise to me. This is exactly what the president did with respect to Afghanistan. He negotiated directly with the Taliban in Doha. He did not involve the Afghan government. And then he's prepared an agreement that in 1 year we'd leave not only our troops, but all the contracts and everything else. Essentially, he sent the signal to Taliban that you won and just give us room to get out of town. And that is essentially, I think, what he's doing now. And it's going to be horrific for the Ukrainian people. Putin will not only seize more territory, he'll take revenge. And then our European allies are now left sort of alone in many respects. What the president doesn't recognize is one of our greatest strengths from World War II on has been our allies everywhere. And he's just spurning our allies and embracing our adversaries. It's ridiculous, but it's also tragic.
Senator, to that very point, I'd like to let you hear a little bit of Donald Trump and his views of Vladimir Putin on peace.
When Putin says that he really wants peace, do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I'd love to have him back. I think it was a mistake to throw him out. Look, it's not a question of liking Russia or not liking Russia. It was the G8.
Is that something our allies want, to have Putin back in the G8?
I don't think so. I think the president forgot that Putin conducted an unprovoked attack upon a country. Indeed, in the past, we, together with our Russia and other allies, have guaranteed the sovereignty of the Ukraine after they gave up their nuclear weapons, and we've certainly forgotten that. Putin has. So we're in a situation now where the president is essentially telling our allies, go, you're on your own, and telling Putin, take what you want. That is disruptive and not just disruptive, it's very, very dangerous.
Joining me also right now from the Munich Security Conference, we have Democratic Congressman from Colorado, Jason Crow. He is a member of the House Armed Services and Intelligence Committees. Congressman, very good to see you. Thank you for joining me. So between Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's backtracking of comments that he made regarding security guarantees to Ukraine and the denial of NATO membership, and then Vice President Vance's address to European allies, how do you assess the Trump administration's performance on the world stage, and have they shown the U.S. will be reliable negotiators to end the war in Ukraine?
Alex, the Trump administration's policies are changing not by the day, but by the hour. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that they have no policy. There's no doctrine. There's no policy. They'll put out a tweet, then they'll pull it back an hour or two later. The problem with that is that none of this is funny. None of this is comical, because it has really real consequences to our partnership, to our allies. I am here in Munich because I refuse to let Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Secretary Hegseth and others be the voice of America to Europe and to the world. There is a group of us here that are engaged in diplomacy, are engaged in discussions to let them know that there's a lot of people in America who understand that our economy is tied to Europe, that our peace and prosperity is tied to Europe, and that we can't pull back into our own borders and forget what's going on in other places.
So in other words, you are trying to accentuate the word reliable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there has to be consistency. They have to be able to see that there are people who understand the issue, that understand that consistency and reliability is key. You know, I believe in America's strength through partnership. One of the reasons why America is actually strong is not just because we have aircraft carriers and bombers and all these weapon systems, but because we have partners. Our alliances around the world are actually the envy of our adversaries. China, Russia, and others desperately want friends and allies that look like the ones that we have. They've tried to build out these alliance networks and they've largely failed. So we have this. And the answer to addressing our problems and our threats is actually to build upon it and expand it, not to pull back from those. But reliability and consistency and being a true good partner is the best way to build those partnerships.
So in terms of strength, that word I'm going to pick up on, because I'm curious what you make of Ukrainian President Zelensky's call for the creation of a European army. Is it justified, considering the concerns in Europe, that they can no longer rely on the U.S.?
I think it's too early to tell whether or not they can or can't rely on the United States. And, you know, this notion of strength, you know, I talked about what I think truly makes us strong. It's our partnerships, it's our allies, it's the fact that we are a values-based alliance and partnership with NATO and other partnerships. But listen, Donald Trump and his version of America, his retrenchment and his pullback is actually a small, weak version of America. He believes in a small America, a weak America that can't be friends, that can't engage with the world. I think history is pretty clear that makes us far less safe and makes our economy less prosperous. I think we have the leadership and the strength and the capability and the innovation to be a partner, to be engaged with the world. And in doing so, Americans will be better off because of it.
Okay, let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard, who is the newly sworn-in Director of National Intelligence and who will deliver daily intel briefings to the president from around the world, which of course feels like a tinderbox in many places. You were on the Intelligence Committee. Are you confident in her ability to advise Trump on our most pressing national security issues?
No, I have no reason to be confident. I opposed the nomination and encouraged the Senate not to confirm Tulsi Gabbard. There's nothing in her past that gives me confidence that she has the experience to do this. But also, I have very real concerns about some of her past statements, pro-Russian statements, her involvement with Syria and other places. So, you know, we're going to see. She obviously was confirmed. She's going to be in the role. I sit on the Intelligence Committee now, which is the primary committee that has oversight in the House of our intelligence community. And I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to conduct oversight to keep America safe, to make sure we have intelligence, that we build alliances, because we get a lot of intelligence from our partners, from our allies here. This is another reason why it's important to have friends, because they have ears and eyes around the world too. And that information helps keep Americans safe. So I'm going to do my job and I'm not going to back down.
Have allies there at the conference in Munich, have they expressed concern over her new role?
Some have. You know, I talk regularly with folks around the world, and there's a lot of questions. So, you know, there's not a lot that I can tell them right now because we're really early into this. But this is an example of why it's important to have people with not just the experience, but also that people can trust in these very critical national security positions. The test should not be total loyalty to Donald Trump, which unfortunately is more often than not the test for these really important jobs in the Trump administration. Listen, we're playing with live fire here, right? I was a combat veteran, or I'm a combat veteran. I served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I can tell you the threats are real that Americans face around the world. The threats are real that our troops face around the world. And when things don't work, when government doesn't work, when things break down, people get hurt, people get killed. So the consequences are real, and that's why this is not a joke when we have people like Elon Musk and others running around firing people and dismantling these really important functions of our government.
Yeah, we thank you for that service and for sharing that perspective. Let me move to what's happening here in the U.S. regarding hundreds of thousands of federal workers who could be caught up in the administration's mass firing of probationary workers. More than 1,000 employees of the Veterans Affairs have been fired, and some civil servants working with the agency tasked with overseeing the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile had been apparently fired, and now NBC News is learning they were just reinstated. Does this feel dangerously disorganized to you? And I'm curious the impact of gutting these government agencies.
Well, of course it's disorganized, right? I'm not against government efficiency and streamlining. I mean, every American knows that taking 8 years to build a bridge just isn't going to work. It's inefficient. It takes too long. We can't build infrastructure fast enough. We can't do a lot of really important things in the way that Americans should be able to expect. And I've been pushing hard for better process and reform, but that's not what this is about, right? That's not what the administration is doing.
So you could see those Democratic congressmen have exposed Trump. And I think what they've done is they've really bombshelled Trump because he doesn't understand consequences. He doesn't understand the domino effect. And what Democrats and allies around the world have done is tear in to Trump's entire agenda by exposing it to even conservatives who are becoming more and more concerned. Because let's be clear, when you make decisions, it's not just that decision, it's the knockoff effects, and also it's the precedent it sets. And what Trump is doing right now is creating a situation in which he will have no allies. And I'm talking about no allies internationally in a way that's going to hurt the United States long after Trump is gone, like 30 years from now. The moves of Donald Trump are still going to have the United States not have as many friends around the world, or the friends they have will not be as steadfast, because can they really trust the United States if they every once in a while even elect a Donald Trump type person? But also in the United States, because what Trump is doing is making it absolutely abundantly evident that he is not an actual friend to anyone except himself, his own bank account, and ironically, like far-right people like Putin and Netanyahu and things like that. So, when Trump doesn't invite Ukraine, we talked about this last night. Again, if you're not at the dinner table, you're on the menu. If you're not actually around the table, you're on the menu. And when he attacks Canada, what Trump is telling even his MAGA allies, even the MAGA people that don't like Canada and don't like Ukraine, in the back of their minds, they're starting to realize, it's like, man, if Trump is doing this to America's greatest friends and allies, what's to stop him from screwing me, the individual MAGA? And they're starting to realize they're on the menu too.